Hey guys, it's Amanda. So I wanted to do my video this week on transitions and endings, specifically endings because on site there have been several endings lately, some planned, some unplanned. The first thing that I wanted to mention is that since I started at this agency in January, there have been 5 resignations. 2 clinicians have decided to move on to other positions. 2 BHPs have decided to move on to other positions, and also a community integration worker have all resigned between the month of January and this very beginning of February. My site supervisor and another employee on site actually pulled me into their offices and apologized to me that the agency is having so many changes, and they said this really isn't the direction that we planned on your internship going, especially because of the diversity that those people brought to the team. But I also stated that I understand, because when you're in a grassroots organization, sometimes those growing pains are really felt. And where this is an organization that's fairly small, losing those 5 people was basically like losing half of their team. So that's been an interesting transition and ending. I also have been involved with the HCT clinician, home and community treatment, and it was actually her BHP that left. So the CEO made the decision that the agency is going to stop accepting home and community treatment referrals at this time, simply because that's a service that needs to be offered with both the BHP and the clinician role, and they don't have anyone to fill that BHP role at this time. So an interesting dynamic is actually that I got to be involved in a team meeting where the clinician sat down with the family so they could talk about the future of services. And they decided to refer to an outside agency, and that agency happens to be my paid employer where I'm a BHP. Now, I've thought about it, and if that referral did come across my desk, I would likely decline working with that family, just because I'm trying to keep my internship separate from my paid work, and I feel like boundary-wise that would be the most appropriate decision. So for that family, though, this ending has really been a transition, because the client that the family was working with, that the clinician and the team was working with, had a fairly strong relationship with that BHP. And they had really worked hard together and worked for some time together. So for him to lose that, when we met with him last week, he almost seems lost. Like, that was somebody he could rely on, somebody he could depend on, somebody who was consistent with him. And now he's kind of lost that. So hopefully that transition doesn't take long for him to be starting over with a new worker, but certainly that relationship won't be the same as the worker that he was with. And unfortunately, the state has taken over wait lists for community supports and home services. So that wait list for him to get reestablished in services could be a while, and there was no way to really transfer over those services from one agency to the next. So fortunately, the clinician had a contingency plan, and she's going to keep seeing him on an individual basis until they can work out transferring the service to the new agency. So that's staff transitions and endings, and also transitions and endings within the HCT program and with this specific client. And I also wanted to mention some of the work that I've been able to take part in on unplanned endings. So when I started my internship, my field instructor, who also works mental health and substance abuse, had taken on a new case, and the person committed to doing their intake, finished their intake, and then didn't show up for the next 3 sessions. The first session, it was a no-show situation. A second session, someone called on behalf of this person. And the third session, this person called the office themselves and canceled the session. So I had a long discussion with my field instructor on what to do in those instances where you're not sure to continue services, keep a case open, or if it's time to have some sort of alternate plan and come up with an ending. So in this case, the field instructor told me that when it's a new case, she gives them those 3 sessions in which they can cancel or no-show. And then she calls them and checks in and sees if they're really ready for treatment, or if they're looking for a different level of treatment, or if they're committed to the service at this time. She said if it's someone that she has rapport with, someone that she's treated in the past, she'll usually only wait 2 sessions with those people and then call them and check in and see what the futures of services is. So I think in social work, there's a lot of instances where we end up at a place of endings. I know for me personally, in the homes that I've worked in, it's very hard for me on my last day, because sometimes as a worker, you never know what the follow-up is, how the family's doing, and how that child or those children are when you leave. So I have my rule of thumb that I will keep it together for the session. I'll say a cordial goodbye, and then I usually end up bawling the whole way home. And just letting that out and then starting fresh the next day, because endings can be very hard. And I also think there's a difference between planned endings and unplanned endings. Sometimes I end up with a lot more what ifs when something's unplanned than I do when I know that that transition's coming and you can prepare and the family can prepare for that ending. So I'm glad I made this video this week, just because of the organizational changes, the changes with clients, and then kind of learning what our role is when people do not come to services and there needs to be some sort of a closure or a plan for ending. So thank you guys for watching. I've been really enjoying the discussions, and I look forward to continuing those in class with you guys. Have a good day.